besties, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kyan and this is Kyan is Booked, and we're gonna wrap up the month of June. I can't believe, and I know a lot of people are probably saying the same thing, but I cannot believe how quickly June went by. Y'all, I'm a teacher and all I see is my summer break just whizzing past me. I know I still have another month. I know I don't have to report back until I think it's August 5th, but literally I'm filming this on June 30th. Tomorrow's July. I don't even want to talk about it. Okay, so I've organized, let me get to what you're really here for, right? I've organized my wrap up a little bit differently because there's going to be 2 reading vlogs that I did because I'm participating in the Summer Romantasy-athon. And so I did a week 1 vlog, and then we had a 48-hour readathon this past weekend. We're actually still having it right now. And I did a little vloggy vlog for that as well. So I'm gonna quickly talk about the books that I go more in depth in those vlogs. And if you're interested in hearing more information about them, then I will link it in the description box. And then as I talk about each of them, it'll also be linked up above. So without further ado, this is not the right sheet of paper. Oh, it's right over here. We're already starting off really well. Okay. So for the week 1 vlog, I read Curse of Shadows and Thorns, which I gave 4 stars, A Court of Ash and Ice, which I gave 5 stars, Crown of Blood and Ruin, which I gave 5 stars. And all 3 of those are by L.J. Andrews. And it looks to be a 9-book series, and then each set of 3, so each trilogy is a different couple. So the next book that I read is going to be a new couple. I also read, finally, Trial of the Sun Queen, which I gave 4 stars, and then Rule of the Aurora King, which I gave 5 stars, both by Nisha J. Tooley. This is in the same series. I have really enjoyed these 2 books. Please click over to the vlog if you're interested in me going more in depth and fangirling over it. But I really had a great time with this series. I will talk about the 3rd one actually, because I did binge all that were available. I thought the series was only going to be 3 books, but we'll get to that portion later in the vlog. So if you're interested in hearing in-depth thoughts and what each of these are about, please feel free to watch my week 1 Summer Romantasy-athon vlog, which is going to be linked, of course. Then for the 48-hour readathon, I read A Crown of Cruel Lies, which I gave 5 stars. This is book 8 in the Fae Guardian series. This follows Darn Aaron and Tink, Beatrix, Trix. I refer to her as the Tinker. So this is, like I said, book 8, and I wasn't prepared for the twist in this one, and I definitely go more in depth in the readathon vlog, so I'm not going to say too much more, but I really enjoyed this one, and I really like how it's setting us up for book 9, which is the end of the Elves trilogy, but not the end of the series. So I'm assuming we get our Crow Shifters next, but I guess we're all just gonna have to stay tuned because I'm literally 1 book away from being completely caught up. And then finally, I read Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. I love Nalini Singh. I've read her Psy Changeling series. I've read all 15 in the first one, and then in the Psy Changeling Trinity series, I have the 2 last ones, and then there's 1 more coming out in the month of July, so I have just those 3, and I'll be completely caught up. This follows Elena Devereaux and the Archangel Raphael, and she is hired by Raphael to help hunt another Archangel. And they're very much an unlikely pairing because she's a vampire hunter, right? So she's only able to hunt vampires at this point in time. But he understands that she has a better understanding of the hunter side of her body. So she's able to kind of connect with that better. And so he borrows her in order to, hunt down the other Archangel that they're having problems with. I don't want to go too far in depth. I love Raphael. I know we're not supposed to. I know that archangels don't have humanity and things like that, but I had a great time with this. I've already downloaded the 2nd audiobook for the next book, which is Archangel's Kiss. So I gave this one 4 stars. Really excited to see where it all goes from here, because let me tell you, the ending of this book, wild. So if you're interested in hearing even more in-depth thoughts about A Crown of Cruel Eyes and then Angel's Blood, then you're gonna go watch the 48-hour readathon vlog, which is also gonna be linked. So, next up, I have been binging Tracy Crosswhite series by Robert Dugani, and I read 2 more books in the series this month. So the first one I read was Close to Home, and this follows Tracy as she gets a case with an active duty service member, and then the case is obviously promptly like court-martialed and like brought over to the Navy, but then all of a sudden like key pieces of evidence go missing. Sorry about that, one of my alarms is going off. Okay, so we're talking about Close to Home, and a key piece of evidence goes missing, so it doesn't look like there's going to be any level of conviction, right? And the biggest, most egregious portion of this case is the fact that like he is being put on trial for literally running over a teenage boy on the way back home from basketball practice, right? But then the problem becomes, how does the heroin in the back of the Navy dude's car tied to all the heroin overdoses within the city, right? And y'all know Tracy's my girl. I love her. I love how passionate she is about hunting down these killers. I love how she's like, no, I'm gonna find this person and I'm gonna put them behind bars. And I don't care that he says he didn't do it. I know he did it. And she's relentless, right? I do know that like in this one, she is kind of going through some fertility issues with her husband, Dan. So that could be a trigger warning for those of you out there who struggle to read about things like that. I think there's going to be a happy ending here in the next couple of books. However, there's a little bit of a struggle because Tracy is over the age of 40, and it's not Dan necessarily because he's already been tested, but it is showing that it will be, it's not going to be very easy for her to get pregnant, but she hasn't completely given up. So, Close to Home, I gave 5 stars. I listened to that on audio. I've listened to this whole series on audio. Highly recommend the audiobooks. You could do the Kindle Unlimited, borrow, and then listen. So I've really been enjoying those. Next, I read A Steep Price, which is also in the Tracy Crosswhite series and also obviously by Robert Dugani. And I gave this one 4 stars. If you see me looking down, I just have my reading journal with all my little notes in it. So this follows a young woman. Are they of Indian descent? I believe so because her best friend just got back from India. Okay, so they're of Indian descent. They live in America. However, like their family's still very traditional to Indian values. And her mother's like really pushing her into this arranged marriage and like, oh, your best friend just got married. You know, why can't you be more like her? Like, I just want to see you happy type situation. And all of a sudden this girl is found in a state park at the bottom of a hole dead, right? And then it becomes about, okay, who killed her? Like the best friend who says there wasn't any problems, this one guy that she was dating, her brother who's furious because she won't conform to the family lifestyle or she won't be Indian enough for him. Like he even says that to her at a certain point. I was like, I'd laid my younger brother out if he said something to me like that. But I do respect the fact that like there are very different situations going on here, but lower your voice when you're talking to me. So I gave this one, I think I already said it, I'm not sure. I gave this one 4 stars. I didn't dislike it. I just felt like I kind of picked out who did it really early on. And I'm not saying like throughout the series that like Robert's trying to throw you off or like it's this big mystery or anything like that. But like, I felt like I guessed it way too early on and it just bothered me. It's not a bad book. It was a really great next one in the series. I really enjoyed it. I was just like, why was this so easy to pick out? Maybe it's because I read too many thrillers. Anyway, moving on. I read Cross Her Heart by Melinda Lee. And this starts the 8-book binge of the Bree Taggart series, okay? So let me set the scene for you. Bree gets a call from her sister. They have a really, really rough childhood. Mom is murdered at the hands of dad, and then dad commits suicide. And the only reason why the kids didn't like go along with them is because Bree, I think she was like 6 or 7 at the time, she gets her younger brother who was a year old and then her younger sister who was like 4 or 5, and they hide underneath the porch and she calls 911 and the sheriff's department responds. And so she is considered a difficult child. And so she gets sent off to a cousin, and then her 2 younger siblings are raised together with the grandparents, right? So then we flash forward, her sister calls and she's like, hey, I'm in some, like, I'm in a situation, like, I really, really need your help. Is there any way you can come home and help me, right? And then Bree just gets this really bad feeling. And she is currently, when we meet her and cross her heart, she is a homicide detective in Philadelphia. So she hops in her car, she comes back to town, only to find out that her sister has been murdered, right? And her husband, who she's been separated from because he has a drug addiction, is wanted for her murder, and he's on the run, right? So then this is where we meet Matt Flynn, and Matt's gonna be our gentleman hero in this series. We definitely grow to love him. But anyways, we meet Matt, and he used to work for the sheriff's department in their city, Grace Hollow. Why does that sound like Gilmore Girls? Hang on a second. No, it doesn't. Why does it not tell me? Hello? Yeah, okay, so it doesn't tell me a city. Anyways, so she comes back. Matt used to work for the sheriff's department. However, in a friendly fire incident, he was shot in the hands, and he was shot multiple times. But more importantly, he was shot in his shooting hand, and he doesn't feel comfortable enough to pass the weapons test with his hand now, because there had to be like multiple surgeries and things like that. So he was a canine handler, and when he retired, he got Brody, which is the canine he had. So Bree rolls up to Justin's house, right? This is the estranged husband. Rolls up to Justin's house, sees this guy and this giant German Shepherd dog. She has an issue with dogs because her dad's dog bit her when she was younger, and it was this whole like really big situation. And so she struggles with dogs, right? However, Brody slowly starts to break her down. So in this one, we see Cross Her Heart. I gave this one, where is it? 5 stars. I gave this one 5 stars. I solely listened to this on audio as well because I did the download, borrow, and listen on KU. They have a really great narrator. She does all the narration for all of the audiobooks. Really easy to follow along, and it's very easy to differentiate from the voices, especially when point of views change, like in the series, which is something I really like from an audiobook. So in this first one, Cross Her Heart, Bree is really focused on finding her sister's killer and taking care of her nephew and niece, because Erin had 2 children and somebody needs to take care of them, right? And at the end of the book, we have Bree's partner, Dana. She drives down from Philly, brings her cat and all of her belongings, and Dana's like, hey, I'm retiring. I've decided to push my retirement off and use some of my PTO, and I'm gonna stay here with the kids until you guys get settled, right? Dana stays forever. We love her, but I really did like this, and like a really nice start to the series. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I binged all 8 of the books, so that's kind of the beginning of all of this. So then the next one I read was See Her Die, and this one follows Bree. She's a sheriff now, so she gets appointed by the governor of New York. She is the sheriff of the county because she needed a job when she moved to take care of her niece and nephew because her sister left sole custody to her. And she gets called out to this campground. There's supposedly a shooting, but there's no blood, there's no victim, there's no shooter. However, as they're trying to like go through and like track the shooter, Brody finds another body like underneath the ice, because this is a place that's cold enough to like, you can ice skate and stuff. So like the ice breaks and there's a body in there. And it happens to be one of the college kids that grandmother called him, was like, hey, I haven't heard from him. Like, he at least calls me if he's gonna ditch me, yah. So Matt's kind of working on that. And then he's helping her with Brody to look for the shooter and all of that. And some way, somehow, this serial killer who's murdering college kids and these 2 grifters are somehow aligned, and they're, Bree and Matt are on the hunt to find answers. Book 3 is called Drown Her Sorrows, and this is a story of a young lady who is found at the like end of is it a river or a stream? Oh, she's floating near the bank of the Scarlet River. Like, that's what I was looking for, bank. So she's floating at the bank of the Scarlet River. They deem it suicide, right? They go and talk to her sister, they talked to the husband, all of that. It seems like they were kind of struggling. Their mom's at the tail end of her life. But everybody in Holly is the victim's name. Everybody in Holly's life, there starts to be problems and everything feels really fishy. And Bree can't put like her finger on it, but she's slowly, sorry, Belle is just doing the most, right? But she knows, so Bree knows that there's something going on here. And at this point in time, Matt has, he's signed on as an investigator, so he can still work for the sheriff's office on a case-by-case basis, but he's not required to carry a weapon, so he feels a lot more comfortable with that. Like, he can still use long-range rifles and things like that, but just with the handgun that relies so much on the dexterity of your hand, he just doesn't feel comfortable with. So he's out there, she's out there, and I will say, Drown Her Sorrows, I gave 5 stars because that was a wild ending. Like, I started to get suspicious about it, but in no way, shape, or form did I guess what happened. And I was just like, there I was listening to my audiobook on the plane, like, what did she do? So next up you have Right Behind Her, which is book 4 in the Bree Taggart series. So what is his name? Adam. So Adam is a younger brother, and he was only a year old when everything happened with their parents. So he bought the farm that they all used to live on, like wanting to like see if he could make a connection to his family or make a connection to like the mom he never really knew because they died when he was 1. But the problem is like all of a sudden another body has been found on the property, right? And they're like, oh wait, did Bree's dad kill this person? Or were they dead long before like he bought the property? But you know, what's better than one body is if you have 2 bodies, right? So Bree's having to confront so much of her past, and she really is the type of girl who's just like, I'll deal with it later, I'll deal with it later, I'll deal with it later. And later comes, right? Later in the form of her having to run across like the farm fields of her old family's home, chasing down a suspect who is actually deeply linked to this, to like the actual mastermind that nobody expects to be the mastermind. Like, I really hats off to Melinda when she wrote this one, because I definitely thought I had the right person pegged, and then we flipped it, and it just, I was in it, okay? I've really enjoyed this series, as you can tell, because now we're moving on to Dead Against Her, which is book 5. This one is, so she goes to check on, she does like a wellness call, finds a brutal double homicide involving one of her former corrupt deputies, Eugene Oscar, right? And so then it becomes about like her, what do you call it? Investigating the murders, and everybody's calling it like, oh, you're corrupt, like you're making up evidence because like you didn't like him, like you fired him, la 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 la. And Bree's like, he retired. But it's semantics, because we all know, like, in the view of public perception, she had already lost, right? So then they call in people from the state to kind of like run the case for her, and they are trying to figure out like, who is it within the deputy's life, and like the corruption that was happening underneath the other sheriff before he passed away, like who's involved in it, and how does it tie back to like these 2 specific murders? Is it money? Is it lack of family allegiance? Like, what is it in this? Like, what is the bigger picture, essentially? I really enjoyed this one. Give this one 5 stars. It was a wild ride. It really was. Okay. Lie to Her. All right, so this one kind of reminds me of like a Lover Scorned, if you will. So this guy is found like dead on his back porch, like right before one of his dates shows up, and he met the date on a dating site. And then a day later, same thing happens to another guy, and then a day after that, another thing happens to another guy, right? So it is very clear that this person is like out for revenge against the men, of this dating app, right? So like that becomes like the common factor, the common denominator in all of this is that like the person that dies has met the same female on the dating app, right? So then they're pushing really hard on this female. She was like, I didn't kill him. Like, I didn't kill him. Like, was I mad at him? Sure. But did I appreciate what they did? No. Did I kill him? Also no. Right? So then it becomes about, okay, so like if you're not murdering people, who is murdering people? And the crazy part is, and like I don't want to give it away, so I'm not going to make that statement because it would definitely spoil it if you're choosing to read it. So we're going to keep going. 5 out of 5 for the serial killer book because y'all know I love my true crime, and this felt very true crime to me. Okay, Catch Her Death is book 7. She takes down a murderer. His family vows revenge, but then they get revenge against Dana and not Sheriff Taggart, and it becomes this whole big situation, and it's really, really messy, but then the kids get brought into it, so Bree's really stressed out because she's like, I don't want my job as sheriff to like, you know, these kids, it's only been a year since our mom died, like they're still dealing with all these emotions, and so like she's emotional, and Matt's trying to calm her down. Her and Matt are doing really well, by the way, just in case you were wondering, because I love that. So all of this is happening, right? 5 out of 5 because I love Dana, and I love the fact that she let everybody know she stood on business, okay? And then the last book of the series that I read, because I think it's like it shows 10 on Amazon, but those are just like pre-orders for the next 2 books. The next one doesn't come out till January. I guess I'll survive. Okay, so pair of hikers find tarps wrapped around bodies. There's a serial killer, right? Why are they only taking pregnant people? Oh, and everybody in the house gets the flu in this one. Talk about miserable. Okay, so that is the Bree Taggart series. I really, really enjoyed it. I'll link the first book down below. Once you have the first book, obviously you can just bounce like down the series if you want to. Like I said, I do the borrow and listen. All right, so let's talk about the books that I haven't talked about yet. Okay, so next up is going to be A Kiss of Iron by Claire Sager. And forgive me, I'm going to have to look up the female main character's name because for whatever, is it Kat? Anyways, I don't know. I will say that I think the 3rd book was supposed to come out in July, but I think it got pushed back, and I'm kind of a little sad about that. Anyways, Shadows of Tenebrous Court, I hope I'm saying that correctly, follows 2 characters. Yes, Kat is on the verge of losing everything because she married the sham of a man because her dad and this man forced her into it, and then now she has this like property and she's supposed to be a lady, and she gets called to court where she meets Bastion Marwood. And Bastion is handsome, ruthless, cunning, stubborn, super hot, very intriguing. So Kat's there to spy against Bastion. Bastion is there to spy against Kat. It would be really great like if they just talked about it, but they didn't, and then it ends up being this whole like convoluted situation at the end, and like that cliffhanger, girl, gentlemen, everybody, I literally read like 500 plus pages, and then I immediately had to read the first part of the next book because I was terrified that something was gonna happen, right? So I really, really enjoyed this. So Bastion is, he's shadows. I don't want to say shadow daddy, but like he controls the shadows, right? And it's something that Kat is like really interested in, but the archaic laws of marriage within her realm don't allow her to get divorced unless her husband gives permission or the queen gives permission, and she's already been denied by the queen, so she can't get divorced. It's so crazy and it's so lame, but whatever, it works in fiction, I guess, sometimes. And that's where like the betrayal begins, when he finds out that she's not everything that she was supposed to be, and then she finds out that he was doing exactly what she suspected he was doing, but she was still angry about it. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. I read this in one sitting, and like I said, it's 500 plus pages. Talk about commitment. Oh my gosh, the 3rd book's not coming out to December 31st. Okay, book number 2, A Touch of Poison. It picks right up where A Kiss of Iron drops off, right? And it deals very much with Bastian's side of things. So we're in Elfane, which is where he lives, and he serves the Night Queen. And so we really start to kind of learn about like his world a little bit more, like the balance between a king and a queen, and one rules during the day and one rules at night, and like that's how you keep it even. So I thought that was like really interesting, and I'm not going to go into like really great detail because like I don't want to give anything away accidentally, but I highly recommend this series. It was so good. Next up, I read Fate of a Sun King, which is book 3. Yeah, I read all that. I didn't read it in one sitting, but I tried really hard to. I was just really tired. By Nisha J. Tooley. So this is the 3rd book in is it on here? I can't ever remember the name of the series. Why am I like this? Anyways, I'll talk about it. So obviously this has a lot to do. We're going back to Atlas and the Sun King and all of that kind of stuff. I don't want to say too much because like I said, like this is the 3rd one in the series. I don't want to give anything up. Like that's one of my biggest fears, is like accidentally spoiling something in one of these wrap ups. So I'm just going to say that I gave this one 5 stars. It was a really awesome time, and I lived, laughed, and loved my way through this. Next up, I finally read Throne of Power and Throne of Vengeance by Rena Kent. I gave Throne of Power 4 stars, and I gave Throne of Vengeance 5 stars. We are back in the Mafia world, and we're following Kyle and Ray. Kyle abandoned Ray about 7 years ago, and she's really starting to hold a grudge, but he shows back up and is like, hey girl, you're gonna marry me? And Ray's like, absolutely not. And then Ray's family's like, actually you are, and like, we need an heir too, right? But here's the problem. Kyle's hiding things, and she knows he's hiding things, and they can't see eye to eye, and obviously there's a betrayal. Obviously we get mad at Kyle at a certain point, but also too, like we get mad at her because, ma'am, you know you're trash for him, so like why are you trying to pretend like you're not? And sir, you know you want her to be the mother of your children, so like let's not pretend. But they both come from like really traumatic backgrounds, and it's very difficult for them. So that much is like, you know, it's understandable, and like their miscommunication is not funny in a sense, but like I know a lot of people hate the miscommunication trope, and I wouldn't say this is like the glaring trope in this, but miscommunication does like, you know, have a factor in this, but it's very realistic because in a lot of relationships people just don't communicate. So that's that one. And then The Bitter Truth by Shanora Williams. I am on her thriller art team. So this follows Dominic and Jolene, Joe for short. They meet in college. He is currently the governor of North Carolina, and she owns a pretty like booming tea business. And it is literally the destruction of who we thought Dom was. And I want to go in depth and I want to tell you more, but the problem is as soon as I mention another character, it'll ruin their character arc, because the way that 5 different people's storylines gets woven together to come through in the very end to be this like chaotic mess is masterful, like masterful. Shanora had such a vision for this, and I loved like just the, oh, just because he's rich, like he thinks that he can get away with this, like I'm not gonna let him. I don't care if it burns down my whole life, right? And it was just such an intriguing concept. And I literally read this in one sitting. I had a great time with it. And it's probably my favorite so far of Shanora's thrillers. So we'll see after I read the last one if it continues to be my favorite. But I can't recommend this enough if you're looking for like a really messy, drama-filled time. It was chef's kiss. Blood and Steel by Helen Schuer, and I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. This is the last one we're going to talk about. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I gave it my best bet, okay? So, Althea Z. We call her Thea. It's just a lot easier because I'm gonna butcher that name, baby. And then, so she has visions of being like a warrior for the mid-realms. The problem is like 20 years previously, there was a prophecy that came out, a dark prophecy that came out that stated that the woman who would bring destruction to the mid-realms was holding a weapon, right? So at that point in time, females had to give up their swords. They weren't able to become warriors for the mid-realms anymore. But for whatever reason, Thea couldn't let it go, right? So she goes as far as to get enough support from the guildmaster and everybody to go and ask the kings and queens for an exception, right? And I won't tell you how it happens because they originally tell her no, and then all of a sudden they tell her yes. And a wild ride for sure. And this whole time, Wilder Hawthorne, Wilder for short, is the pinnacle of warriors that Thea wants to be, right? And so she's so inquisitive, but he's like very closed off. Like he's been by himself for a while. He's one of 3 warriors left at the title that he is. And you have to go through this like great rite, and there's this huge quest, and like there's all these things that you have to do, right? And then the mid-realms have to find you worthy. It's not just about passing these tests, right? So it's a push and pull, it's the angst, I'm gonna tell you right now, Wilder Hawthorne, I'm so obsessed with him. Like I am reading the 2nd book right now and I'm having such a good time, and I just want him to like let go of societal norms and let go of everything that he needs to let go of and like just be with our girl, right? But the problem is like he sees her, he sees exactly who she is, and he knows that the only way she's going to be prepared about what's coming for her is if he prepares her, but he has to be a certain person in order to do that. And the angst and the push and pull, like nobody makes her as angry as Wilder does, right? And nobody infuriates him the way that Thea does. And it's a push and pull, and it's the side characters, and it's this mid-realms that's literally being ripped apart by a veil. And I'm having such a good time with it. It is brilliant. It is such a good read. If you haven't read Blood and Steel yet, I highly recommend that you jump on this train with us. The 4th book is out. It is a completed series now, so you can just binge all the way through it. So, as you can tell, my June reading month was awesome. I had such a great time. I'm really enjoying the the Summer Romantasy-athon. I'm having like such a great time. I'm only 11 books in of 35, so we're really gonna have to kick it into gear in July. So I don't know, like, will I meet the 35? I'm not sure, but I'm gonna get as close to that number as I can. I'm having such a great time. Really, really enjoying reading, really enjoying being on like summer break and like living my life and all of that good stuff. So y'all know the drill. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I've got a lot of like really fun stuff coming, especially in July, because we're about to hit my 1 year on BookTube, and then my birthday month, of course. And then, you know, I just have a lot of fun things planned before the end of the year. And make sure you like and comment on this video, and I will catch you in whatever video is coming next. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.